The ancient history of Longhorse. A horse's skull missing the jawbone, a chain of bones that extend into infinity, a guardian to the innocent. Longhorse, a powerful protective creature, one that came to the agency's awareness in the early 1900s. Further research has revealed that Longhorse has been active for longer than that. Much, much longer. Depictions of the creature can be found in the artwork of many cultures, from bamboo paintings in Japan to pottery fragments in ancient Greece. Longhorse has even been found in cave art. There is even a famous story that was put into the agency archives, one from Senior Agent Nevada. He is of Amerindian descent, and one day told the agency of the ancestral story his family tells of Longhorse. He decided to add it when requests came down the line for any information about Longhorse, either from researchers or from agents. In his youth, he never believed the tale his grandfather told him. Even after joining the agency, Nevada didn't have the time to review the Longhorse files. So, after being saved by the creature and becoming a believer, he happily shared the story. The story involved Nevada's many times great-grandfather, Ahote, who lived somewhere around the 1600s. He was aptly named, as Ahote couldn't sleep easily growing up. Boundless energy and curiosity saw the kid exploring the areas around his tribe's home. The boy often discovered new things and was frequently getting in trouble for going places he wasn't supposed to. But Ahote's endless cheer and enthusiasm made it hard for people to actually dislike him. Plus, Ahote was fast and clever. He was able to get himself out of trouble many times by just being a bit faster and cleverer than most. So, one sleepless night, Ahote snuck out of his family's home and wandered into the woods at night. How could he not? It was one of those beautiful full moon nights, when the forest, cast in moonlight, awoke mysteries. Walking around, wondering what he was going to find next, Ahote's thoughts were interrupted by a loud crash, one that echoed through the forest. Now, most people would not investigate that sound, they'd go in the opposite direction. But Ahote's curiosity was unceasing. So the kid, barely a teen by this time, went and followed the noise. Tracking the sound brought him to a clearing where he saw the oddest thing. The noise had been a large tree that had fallen over due to age, but the thing was, the tree had fallen on something. Before Ahote's eyes, a weird snake-like thing was thrashing under the tree. It was trying to free itself, but the tree had pinned most of its body to the ground. Ahote drew closer and saw that it wasn't a snake at all. It was much larger and longer than any snake. Plus, the thing had no flesh. It was made of bone that was somehow connected by thick, black strands. Finally, he saw its head. It was a horse's skull, and it had no lower jaw. Ahote was amazed. It was the first time in the boy's young life that he had ever seen something so odd. How wonderful! He knew that he had to help the creature somehow, but the fallen tree was large and Ahote was slight in stature. Looking around the clearing, he saw what he needed: a large, thick branch and a rock that wasn't too heavy for the boy to lift. Taking both, he approached the pinned creature without fear for his life. In his surprise and his haste to render aid, he never considered that the horse skeleton could be dangerous. Ahote didn't hesitate. He placed a hand on the creature's skull and stroked its hair. The struggling creature instantly calmed at his touch. Grinning, Ahote took the rock and the heavy branch and wedged them under the downed creature, forming a crude lever. It took some work to get them in place and, pushing with all his strength and body weight, he lifted the tree, just a little. Enough for the snake to wriggle itself free. It was just barely enough, but, to the boy's amazement, the creature floated in the air, circling itself and looping around. Ahote saw that the creature was much larger than he had expected. No matter how he looked, he couldn't see where its body ended. The creature's bones cracked ominously in the air, but Ahote didn't flinch. Nothing in the boy's instincts told him that he was in trouble. He was proven right when the creature pounced, and Ahote laughed as he was wrapped up in an embrace. That was how Ahote met Longhorse. Every day, the boy would visit the clearing and Longhorse would be there. The two would play games or explore. Longhorse would show Ahote many things. New locations never seen, interesting animals and creatures that Ahote could only see in his dreams. It was an education that Ahote was receiving, wrapped up as games and adventure. People in Ahote's village noticed that the boy was changing. While still energetic and still curious, he was starting to gather knowledge and wisdom. His words, though spoken casually, carried the answers to the village's problems. Passing on herbs that would help with sickness, easily treating wounds from accidents, and effortlessly tracking animals during hunting. Off-handed comments that would resolve arguments before they became heated. Ahote was, without a doubt, improving the quality of life for his village, albeit unknowingly. He was just so fascinated by the things his new friend was showing him. But as the changes were to the village's benefit and Ahote was causing far less trouble, everyone settled with being happy that he was finally maturing. One day in the clearing where Ahote usually met Longhorse, the two were playing when Longhorse suddenly froze. Its whole body tensed, and Ahote knew immediately that something was wrong with his friend. He also noticed the direction that Longhorse's head was pointing. It was back towards the village. He looked at the sky and saw distant smoke in the air. He looked to his friend and asked one thing: "Can you help?" The creature was motionless for a moment, but then it nodded and lowered its head to the ground. Ahote understood the creature's meaning. Get on. Brave as always, he didn't hesitate and got on Longhorse's body, seating himself at the spot where the creature's neck met its body. In an instant, the creature took off, Ahote on his back as they wove through the forest in a blur of motion. If the situation wasn't dire, Ahote would have enjoyed himself, but for now, the boy was only worried about his home. Soon, the two reached the village and saw that a lot of the homes were on fire. It seems that some of the kids were playing with the cooking fires, and things had gotten out of control rapidly. People were making water chains from the nearby river, but as the village appeared ready to burn to the ground, several people had already given up. Ahote bent over Longhorse's head and, looking the creature in its eyeless socket, he asked the creature to help. Ahote ignored that some of the villagers had noted his arrival and were staring horrified at the monster he had ridden in on. His whole attention was on Longhorse and saving his village. The creature looked around the village and then looked up into the sky and nodded at Ahote. It clicked its body and the boy understood to hold on. Longhorse flew up and up and up into the cloudy sky. By this point, the villagers had stopped putting out the fires to watch as the boy and the creature ascended into the sky, including Ahote's stunned parents. In the sky, Ahote could see the world and saw how small he was in relation to it, but they went higher and higher until they were in the clouds. Longhorse made a clicking sound with its body and, again, somehow Ahote knew what he had to do. The small boy sucked in his breath and he yelled. He yelled as loud as he could, for as long as he could. He bellowed until his voice was hoarse and he was unable to do more than pant as he waited. And then the sky rumbled as something sleeping in the clouds woke up. It began to rain. It began to rain hard as something rumbled back to Ahote with joy. The boy felt his face touched briefly by something he couldn't see, and he gave thanks. The fire was extinguished by the rain, and the villagers watched in silence as Ahote and Longhorse descended from the sky. Agent Nevada ended the story there, but mentioned that his ancestor was famous. He was Ahote the horse rider, and there were many more stories about the two.